Hey everybody, I'm Ross Johnson, your favorite co-host. You are listening to WAYO 104.3 FM Rochester. Coming up next on The Sound of Tomorrow, we're talking about COVID tests. We're talking about maybe drinking. We're talking about, I can't read this note, so it's going to be a surprise what I wrote down for the other thing. And then good positive news things that happened in 2021, not including my note-taking. Coming up next on the show, WAYO. But first,
Hi, Ross, and happy. What?
what?
Why are you naked?
I'm not naked. Stop exaggerating.
You're approximately naked?
Oh, well, then you're approximately a ukulele virtuoso.
Oh, thank you. Would you like to hear my latest solo ukulele concerto?
Haven't we been through enough this year, Heather?
Which brings us back to my initial question. Why are you naked?
Ahem.
Sorry. Approximately naked. Is that a diaper?
Of course it's a diaper.
So I want to be very clear on this. There is no shame in finding utility in some sort of adult diaper pad. At any given time, roughly 25 million Americans deal with some form of urinary incontinence. It causes unneeded embarrassment and brings about a lot of unfair stigma to which I do not subscribe.
It is amazing how you have all this stuff right at hand.
Oh, thank you. It's important to me that I'm always ready to make a point or win an argument.
Good for you. But no, not incontinent, but I would tell you if I were, and will if I ever find myself dealing with related issues.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, you're a little too excited.
I spent literally all day talking to my cat, so a change of topic would be positively thrilling.
Noted. But no, I'll just cut to the chase. Heather, I would like to introduce you to myself, aka Baby New Year.
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess I get it. It's just
What?
frankly.
It's all the hair, isn't it?
I mean,
Okay, little known fact for you. Babies are not infrequently born covered in a soft, downy fur called lanugo.
fascinating. Are they also not infrequently born with the lyrics to Aerosmith's I Don't Want to Miss a Thing tattooed across their navels?
You told me you loved that tattoo.
Oh, I lied a really lot. But let's not dwell on your poor decision making. Point being, not a lot of baby tattoos.
Okay, but other than that, kinda nailed it?
Well, okay. Babies also don't run around with a pack of Newports taped to each arm. Have you ever even seen a baby?
Joke's on you. I was a baby in the late 70s. Literally, all of my baby pictures have me holding a pack of Newports.
You make a good point. I have baby pictures in which, instead of a bottle of formula, I'm literally just clinging to a Colt 45.
Those were the days.
So, baby New Year, huh?
Yep.
Any reason in particular?
You wanted a New Year's sketch.
So you put on a diaper, loaded up on malt liquor and cigarettes, and drove over here in the middle of winter.
I figured it would be a funny visual, you know?
We're on the radio.
It's theater of the mind, Heather. Do you want some of this Colt 45 or not?
Tastes like childhood. Sweet
Newport?
and delicious.
Right.
Of course.
Of course. Hey everybody, I'm Ross Johnson, your favorite co-host.
And I'm Heather Tykowski, the babe with the power. Welcome back to the last Sound of Tomorrow of 2021, right here on WAYO LP Rochester.
Thank goodness.
I know, it's episode 450 as well. It's a momentous occasion.
That's wild. Give or take.
I know, right? But
We
in
don't have the
our
best-
officially numbered series.
Yeah. It's what if you added up all the rando things that didn't get in the count, we'd probably be
600
higher,
or so.
600, yeah.
We'd be higher, but this is a good way to ring out 2021. So Happy holidays, Ross. We just
Happy holidays, Heather.
had Christmas, or some of us did, and we're looking at New Year's. How are your holidays?
Uh, okay. So my mom doesn't listen to this, so my holidays were good. My holidays at home were lovely. My holidays with my family, I will I will offer a couple of very quick vignettes that will set the scene for you. All right.
Ooh.
So the first vignette. This is just an image I want you to picture in your head. Um, Shrimp ramen. So that is one. That was one I got. A case of I came home and I opened up Christmas presents from the family, and I got a case of shrimp ramen. So that was fun. That was interesting.
Oh, a whole case of shrimp ramen.
Well, I guess it was a case. It was several packets of shrimp ramen in a Ziploc bag. And I want to. So I guess I should. As I'm saying this, I realize I'm probably creating an image of it. I mean, it sounds like me being mean about a less fortunate family member, perhaps, who was trying and didn't know, who did that. That's what someone might be thinking as you're hearing this. And it was not. It was definitely a passive aggressive dig about me being a vegetarian. So that was that. And
Okay,
then
all right.
I also got so among other things, the other vignette I will offer up for you is I opened up, got a monogrammed tote bag
Oh,
with my initials in the proper format, with the R
okay,
and the
yeah.
N and then the J in the middle.
Okay.
Then opened up another. There's another monogrammed tote bag. That's lovely. Me and my husband, with the initials KCA, which are not
Who for whom are those? KCA.
not the
Does
initials of anyone I know at all.
no.
So,
Um
and it's also hard to explain without knowing my family. It's hard to explain why you don't ask about these things. You just like let them go because like asking is like more
uh-huh.
that's inviting the whirlwind. Um, so I guess those would be my two favorite Christmas memories.
Okay. Wow.
Other than
In-
that, lovely.
Interesting. Hmm. Yep. My holidays were entirely canceled.
Oh,
Like absolutely
oh my God,
everything
you
has
must have been in
been
heaven.
canceled or postponed. Because these days I have so few things to do, it was almost a like, oh, okay.
Oh,
But yeah, my family holiday got pushed out for a couple weeks. I was supposed to have a little Christmas celebration tonight. That's gotten pushed out. When I found out I wasn't going to be seeing my family, I thought like, oh, I've been invited to this little potluck thing. I guess I'll go to that. I did buy all the things to make the salad I wanted to bring. Canceled. Like just everything. Canceled.
oh.
I know.
Well, you're here on the Sound of Tomorrow, which is sort of like the gift you give yourself.
Yes. No, this is a huge gift. I love it. But
Sure.
Ross, do you know what I did for the first time before I knew that all of my holiday events would be canceled?
Is it is it the is it the thing where you do in the back part? Is it that one?
No, no,
I don't know if we can. I don't know if I can say
no,
it on the air. Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no.
No.
Um, it
Okay.
does
I
involve
didn't.
though, like put it in a. It involves putting a thing in a thing. Um,
Okay.
I did my first at-home COVID rapid test.
Oh, how was
Yeah,
that for you?
it was fine. It was. I've heard all kinds of stuff on social media, both people finding the test quite easily and people saying that they've scoured the entire city, whatever city they're in, they can't find them. I will say here, like, not to promote anything, I was able to find them at a local pharmacy right by my grocery store, and they had a ton of them. And
Okay.
maybe there was a limit. I wanted to get 5, and they just gave me 5. There was no like, can you show your ID? Do you live in New York State? Where's your Vax card? They just sold them to me. So for me, that was simple. Doing the test was also simple. The instructions were really clear. And I do
Yeah.
have like a little info in an article from Slate about this because there've been a couple things floating around about these tests
Okay.
that like I don't know everything there is to know about it, but something that happened with me, I took mine. I was lucky enough to receive a negative result. And then I was talking to a family member who didn't believe that the tests work.
Okay.
This family member might have had a point because it says in this article from Slate that it's entitled, You Could Have COVID Symptoms and Still Get a Negative on a Rapid Test.
Mm.
And why that's actually good news. I did not have symptoms. I was doing the like, just double check. I'm boosted, I'm vaxxed, but I want to also just see what I get on one of these tests before I see my family.
Right.
But you can get like these. Apparently, the long and short of it with the rapid test that you do at home is you need to really have a huge viral load for the test to pick it up. If you're just a little sick, or maybe if your immune system is having the response it should because you're vaccinated and your immune system is responding the way it should, your viral load is going to be so small that the test isn't picking it up. But the other thing, this concerned me a lot. I've seen a lot of this online, and my family member mentioned it to me. The tests have specific instructions on when to read your results and when the results are accurate.
Yeah.
And then what I've heard happens, and this is what my relative was very worried about, is the test, if you just let it sit on your counter, for example, for 2 or 3 hours, it will then show that you have COVID. It'll give you the result looking like you have COVID. The thing is, the test isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
Like the instructions are very, very specific about set your timer, check at this time. That's your result. The instructions even say, like, after this, it's not accurate anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one I had, it was even like it even wanted you to. I mean, you didn't have to, but it was even like we have this app. Use this app, and we'll walk you through step by step. And there's a timer in the app,
Yeah.
and like click that you're starting it here to make sure you're looking at it in this. Well, it's like a. I mean, and the one I had, I don't know if they're all the same. It was like a 15-minute window.
Mine was also 15-minute, and I do not know if it every single one of them is 15-minute, but that was mine. I even saw something on Twitter today. Someone was saying, and this is, I mean, this is objectively gross. They live in New York City and they happen to see just on the sidewalk a COVID test, and they're like, and it was positive. And people
Mm,
rightfully pointed out, like, gross, medical waste on the street. That's cool. Was it next
right.
to a used needle? Disgusting. But then people also pointed out, like, hey, you can't know because you don't know how long it's been there. And
Right.
these things are known to show a different result than they did. So don't go like spreading that around, because my relative was even saying that someone they knew took the test and it showed they didn't have COVID, but then they came back home after being out for a couple hours and it said they did have COVID. And then a couple days later, they did have COVID. And it's like, no,
That's not what that's
that's
doing. That's
not,
not what that means. Yeah.
no.
That's like if I flipped a coin, do you have COVID? And it came up you have COVID. That's and then you maybe you do, but I didn't prove that. I just made a
Right.
guess. Because that
Yeah.
test at that point is not accurate.
That was the thing. And I kept trying to explain. Um, and I get it. People are scared. People don't quite know. There is the fact, apparently the medical fact, that these, what are they called? These rapid tests are not the PCR tests that I
Mm-hmm.
guess are the lab tests where they send away for some kind of DNA analysis to
Right.
see if you have the virus DNA.
They
You
they, they have they have a specific use, and they're not the you know they're not the it is a little getting a I don't even want to say more accurate test, because my understanding is it's not that it's not accurate. It's just that, I mean, I guess in a sense they're less accurate, but it's like you said. I think it's more, you put it more clearly than that, which is the that it's accurate if you have enough of the if you have that higher viral load.
right.
It just doesn't, it has a harder time detecting at a lower level that a more rigorous test might pick
Mhm.
up.
Yeah.
But it's a prophylactic, like you said. It's a I want to do a little extra check, and my understanding is they're really meant for people without symptoms who want
Mhm.
the little extra reassurance that I don't have a ton of COVID floating around in me.
Yep.
Um,
And that was why I wanted to do it. I had also been hanging out with someone who has like the flu or something. And so
mhm,
there was a lot of concern about like, is it
yeah,
ah. So I wanted to take the test. I've got a couple more. I think we're all going to try to gather, like you and I and a couple other people later in the week. I'll take a test before that, just again to make sure. But so
I
I did want to address that whole thing because my relative was very, very agitated about the person that they knew who'd taken the test and it said negative, and then they came back home a couple hours later and it was reporting a positive. And I feel like that's I actually, because I know myself, I took my results, I took a photo of my results, and I threw the test in the trash because I know me. And I know, even though it was printed very clearly and I was aware of all of this, if I just left that sitting on my counter and 2 hours later it showed a positive, I'd be upset. I'd be freaked out. I'd be like, I have COVID, even though I know.
yeah, and
Like, I
I
just,
I didn't I didn't know about that. I didn't know that it might show, it might read that you had COVID later. Um, But I sort of did the same thing, just because I mean it was sort of medical waste that didn't want laying around.
it
So I
was
was like,
also gross. I was like, let's get
I
this out and like, let's wipe up the site.
I mean, you sort of like you sort of squirt your booger juice into a little thing on a
You
plastic strip.
do.
So it's not like, I mean, it's the same thing as a
Yeah.
pregnancy test. Like it's just it's
Yeah.
lovely, but you don't necessarily need to leave it lying around, because
Yeah.
it's sort
You
of a bit of medical waste.
Yeah, you don't need to keep it like just hanging out on the side of your sink
Hmm.
or whatever. And just for anybody who hasn't taken these, I know another thing I heard about the nose swab tests early on. The people who got them said that they were so painful and so annoying, and it was the worst experience they'd ever had in their lives. I was fine.
Yeah, well, and I know I've had I didn't have a like professional medical test, one of the ones where it like takes a few days, because I think that's sort of the gold standard. But then you've got a couple days where as far I guess it's
Hmm.
sort of the gold standard in terms of accuracy. But then the downside of that is you've got a couple days where you don't know. So are you spreading COVID? Are you um,
Right.
but when I got that, I guess it was after they had sort of improved that technique. And then this one, yeah, I was a little worried about it, because I was like, I don't know if I can stick something way up my nose, but it's really not. It was
Yeah.
fine. It was not that bad. It was not bad at all. It was. I think the one I actually jammed a little too far, because I was trying to be like I think I jammed it further than I needed to, but it was fine.
Yeah. I
And
didn't.
I don't like stuff up my nose, so if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest deal for me was I had to take out my nose rings.
Okay.
Yeah, which just they can be a little annoying to put back in sometimes. But that was like kind of the oh boy, out you go, guys.
Yeah.
But so
No, but I think.
yeah, I'm glad I have some more of these rapid tests. I get that they have a particular use, but also, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, if I'm showing symptoms of illness before I'm going to get together with friends for New Year's, I'm going to also cancel that plan so that I don't give my friends anything. Because whether
Right.
it's COVID or a cold or a flu, I don't want to give any of that stuff around.
Yeah, certainly not. And I hope if anything comes out of COVID, we've talked about this before. If anything comes out of COVID, it'd be nice. greater consciousness of, you say this and people are like, oh, I guess we'll just live in cocoons and never talk. It's like, no, but a little more conscientiousness about illness, disease. Even if COVID were eradicated tomorrow, we're still going to have flus and colds and things like that. Things that can
Uh-huh.
be lethal. I mean, things that can be deadly.
Yes,
Um, you know,
absolutely.
particularly for certain populations, but even just I mean, the flu can have an impact on people who don't think they're going to be impacted by the flu. I mean, the flu can have you know, random people that feel like they're perfectly healthy and they're fine can have that extremely negative, possibly fatal. I hate to say impact. To be impacted by the flu, and if by being a little more conscientious about spreading illness,
Mm-hmm.
we can prevent. If we can save a handful of people and or save a bunch of people from the inconvenience, if we can save a bunch of people from death by being a little more conscientious,
Yes.
that is not a bad thing to me at all. And we've talked about what the COVID precautions did to flu numbers. We're
Right.
probably not going to do all that in a normal year, but if you cut, a bad flu year, you're talking 20,000, something like 20,000 people will
Mm-hmm.
die. If you can cut that in half,
That would be so great.
I
And
mean, that's a lot of people.
now that mask wearing is more normalized, and
Yeah,
even the anti-maskers can't say that it's weird to see someone in a mask. They might not
right.
like it, but it's not weird anymore. I really hope that there will be that. For example, if I feel like I've got a bit of a cold, but I really have to go to the store, well, I'll just put a mask on my face to try to protect others from me breathing on them.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a shift starting in at least my office space before COVID where coming up there was always this kind of noble thing, like people would come to work and they'd be really sick and they'd have a
Hmm.
terrible cold, but it would be seen as this like, oh well, the office can't run without me here, and the look how dedicated I am to my job. And somewhere along the line it turned into coworkers kind of yelling at each other in an encouraging and gentle way to go home, get some rest, don't breathe on me, get out of here.
Well, and it's two things. It's that corporate bull crap that we get fed into us.
Yes.
Um, and also the threat. I mean, the legitimate threat of like, oh, if you're someone who's calling in sick,
Mhm.
you're not as valuable an employee or whatever. Or if you, oh my gosh, that person used all of their sick days.
Right?
All of their allotted sick days. Can you believe it? What a slack! What a dirtbag! So
Yeah. And I'm hoping
hopefully
that
that
that's
attitude.
shifting.
Hmm. Hopefully that attitude is right out the window.
Yep. Yeah, because
I'm
I
sure it's
know,
not, but hopefully it's
I
like
know.
it's a little bit out the window. It's halfway out the window at least.
It would be great if it were because that stuff would also just rip through the office. So and so would be sick, and then everybody else would get it, and then everybody's sick, and it's just people are bringing it home to their families, and just a bad scene.
And on a practical, from a business point of view too, you're like, oh great, now by preserving a little bit of productivity from one person who was sick, now we've lost productivity from half the office because everybody's sick.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't make sense on any level.
It really
So
doesn't. So I'm hoping that that will be along the lines of what you were saying, like with more awareness, unfortunately brought about by an absolutely deadly disease. Um, but maybe it'll make some long-lasting improvements.
I would love that.
Wouldn't that be nice? We can dream.
Speaking of long lasting improvements,
I know. I want to hear more dreaminess here.
you want to hear some good news, Heather?
I do.
You want to hear a bunch of good news?
I want to hear so much good news. I want to hear so much good news that I'm just smiling till my jaw hurts.
Okay, so we talk about terrible things that happen all the time. It's our
All the
favorite thing to
time.
do.
We
It's
sure do.
sort of our jam. It's sort of our zone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I also realized too that like that's everybody's jam and everybody's zone now. So it's sort of it
Oh,
gets a
they're biting
little.
our
I think
rhymes.
I think we're absolutely. I think we're better at it than just about anybody
Well, yeah,
else. But
because we're so jaded.
right.
And we sound cheerful while we talk about the bad things.
Exactly. So that's a key. That's a key difference. But um, you know, we've talked plenty of times about how the conventional media, social media, it's so geared the whole business structure of all that is so geared toward keeping people um, giving you bad news so that you're afraid.
Mhm.
And then the carry on effect of that is for politicians, or and I'm not saying everybody, but for politicians or whoever wants to manipulate you. That's a lot. Once you're keyed up and afraid of everything, it's very easy to just like pick a target and point you in that direction.
Mhm.
It's very it I don't think it's a shock to anyone that we're more easily manipulated when we're afraid,
Mhm.
which I feel like is our whole the whole like raison d'etre of everything in our society at this point is just like, how can we make people more afraid?
Yes.
So so a little bit of a New Year's resolution for me is to try to look a little bit more at the good things that are going on in the world, and not in a Pollyanna sort of way, but just in a I guess only looking at the negative and not acknowledging that there is any positive is no more realistic
Mhm.
than only looking at we also sell ourselves on the idea that like if you're only looking at the negative you're more realistic, but there are good things as
No,
well that are also the truth.
yeah, exactly.
And part of this was like I see a lot of my very concerned but not necessarily educated liberal friends like and I so just briefly like just this is just a very hazy example, but they'll talk about like the immigration system at the border. Oh well, it's the same now. It's just as bad with Biden as it was under Trump. Our immigration system is terrible, and we've talked about this through a couple of administrations now, a few administrations now. Our immigration system, our border situation is terrible.
Mhm.
It's horrifying. It's inhumane. It's no good. I don't defend it in the least. But I also have friends who are immigration lawyers who will tell you that like people have fought nonstop to gain little scraps of ground that are helpful to people and that do make a difference. Um, and things are better now, even if they're not great. Um, and to just say like everything's exactly the same without any examples or any even understanding of the situation, it's not. It doesn't help because you've got people who are like working really hard to make it better, who
Mhm.
you're not giving any credit, you're not helping. You're saying everything's the same, like all the work they've done is garbage. So there's no incentive for anyone to keep going. There's no incentive for anyone to donate. There's no incentive for anyone to do anything because everything's just as bad as it was before, and all these people who are doing work are just they're just doing nothing. You know what I mean? So that's
Mhm.
just an example that I've seen of where yes, things are bad, things are not good, but there are things to appreciate as well, and there are things to understand and work harder on. Anyway, that's a little bit something that sort of gotten me in mind of that, just because I know people who work on immigration who will tell you that like there are things that are much better that
Mhm.
affect people in a lot of ways. Not nearly enough, but they're there. Anyway, um, so this started with a list from Mashable of all places, but I stuck with things that I could like sort of cross verify from other places. So this is a sort of a listicle. It's not a listicle. I mean, it was a lengthy. These were lengthy things that I sort of pared down, and I stuck with things that I could sort of cross reference just to make sure. And there was some other stuff from the Washington Post and a couple other news sources, but. Um, so since we were talking about COVID,
Mhm.
one of the first things on my list here. As much as there are problems with vaccine hesitancy, as much as there are problems with people getting access to vaccines, as much as there are problems with people getting access to tests,
Mhm.
um, we've administered more doses of vaccine than there are humans on the planet. So we've administered as of like this was as of like a week or two ago. We've administered about 8.5 billion doses compared to 7.8 billion people on the planet. And we should be hitting about 50% of the entire human race should be immunized right around now. and that doesn't include boosters. So, and that's increasing rapidly as the vaccines are becoming available in places that have struggled to get access to vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
So, they expect that to quickly ramp up to about 75% of the human race to be vaccinated by 2022. And that's not just, again, as the vaccines becoming available more globally. China's now dispensing 8.7 million doses of vaccine a day. They are 83% fully vaccinated. The African Union bought 400 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and is working on improving infrastructure in general. And
Mm-hmm.
the African Union is committed to using the infrastructure they're building for COVID, to keep that as a permanent, structure for diseases that come down the line in the future, so that they have this, they can use what they're learning and what they're building for COVID to be ready for the next pandemic, or the next major wave of disease that comes down the line.
That's great because we don't want to believe that there's another wave of disease or pandemic coming, but there always is.
Well, that's it, and it's whether it's it could be. I mean, there's going to be something big or small,
Right.
um, and it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be 100 years, but they're going to be small. I mean, the next major one might be a way off. It might not be. I mean, it's sort
Right.
of the luck of the draw, but there's definitely going to be I say minor, but a minor, a minor disease outbreak on a global scale. That's still a huge big deal.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Brazil, this is the last one about the COVID. Just a couple of examples of things. So Brazil, we have their president is a vaccine denier. Um, they have nevertheless vaccinated 3/4 of the population, which is better. They've done better than the U.S. and
Mm-hmm.
more than the total European Union. So those are examples of, it is for all of the people that are being poop heads about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know it's good to remember that there are an awful lot of people, probably most people, are
Yeah.
doing the right thing.
Yep. Trying to take care of
um
themselves and others.
and that's worth kind of taking a moment to celebrate, I think,
Oh, it's
because
great.
it's a it's a very vocal minority that is big enough to throw a wrench in the whole thing. But
Mm-hmm.
the fact that the world, the majority of the world has sort of come together on this, it's cool.
It's really cool. And when you think about it, what a feat. And this time last year, we were kind of getting news like they're working on a vaccine. They might be close to a vaccine. We were so excited about it, but
Yeah.
we didn't even know like when can we get it? Will we be able to get it? Will there be enough of it for people to have it?
Right.
And look at those numbers now. And
Yeah.
really, I don't I don't know anyone in my life who isn't really pleased to be vaccinated. Pleased and grateful and excited. So as much as it is fraught, because of course every time I think of how I'm vaccinated, I think of the people who are hindering the
Yeah.
eradication of COVID by adamantly just refusing through bullheadedness.
Right.
Um wow, I'm so grateful.
It's That's the right way to put it. I mean, it's you've got to be you've got to be grateful for what we've been able to accomplish. And you know what? If you're not on the train, get on the train, because it's a nice train here. It's fun. We're
People
feeling good
are
about ourselves. We're doing
happy.
the right thing.
We
You
are.
know.
It makes you feel good. You can feel so smug when you do the right thing.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
this is the kind of smugness that like you get to show off because sometimes you have to show proof that like
Right.
you're community minded and you're looking after your health and others. So you like get to show off this proof of like I'm a good person. I'm doing the right thing. So if you ever doubt that you're a good person and you're a person who hasn't been vaccinated yet, if you get vaccinated, then people are going to be like, you're a good person.
You've got documentation. Everybody
Right?
loves it.
You can download a thing on your phone that pretty much says, like, look at me. I'm a good person.
A couple of sort of carryovers from the stuff that's gone on with COVID that we've developed with COVID. So one of the biggest strains of the flu virus, the Yamagata virus, would used to regularly kill about 500,000 people every year. It is extinct, largely thanks to masking and social distancing. That is not 100% certain, but it is pretty much. I mean, it's all but disappeared, and a lot of experts believe it has died out, or it is very close to dying out entirely.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
great.
all down to a year of masking and social distancing. Um, the Thanks to some of the developments with the COVID vaccines, malaria. There's now a malaria vaccine.
Hmm.
That's early days, so yet to see how well that's going to work, but it works. I mean, we know it works. We just don't know how effective it's going to be because it hasn't been really put to the test. But I mean, that's huge. There's never been a parasitic disease like malaria in history that's had a vaccine. So that is brand new, and that also means like potential for other parasitic diseases where there's been
Hmm.
no real there's been no vaccine that there might be in the future. And then,
Right. And
there's some other developments with malaria we've talked about. Yeah.
yeah, I remember us mentioning with the malaria vaccine too, just the fact that something somewhat effective has been developed. Because last time we spoke of it was a vaccine. That's awesome. It wasn't as effective as people desired, but the fact that there was one meant that there was something that could be improved instead of just this doesn't exist and we don't know how to make it exist, which is really huge, great news.
Yeah. Yeah. There's other stuff with malaria too. So there's sort of I mean, there's real hope for malaria for maybe the first time in history, which is
I
a disease that
think,
impacts tons and tons of people because
oh, so many.
um, they're doing like they're using drones to basically spray anti-mosquito spray. There are some new techniques where they're basically changing the gut bacteria of mosquitoes so that um, so it blocks the viruses they would spread. I mean, there's really like the the global health infrastructure is really sort of hitting it from a bunch of directions, and that's such a huge global killer that impacts so many
Mm.
people. So, and I mean, when we've traveled, our experience was like you get these pills because you're a rich American, so you can have these
Yep.
pills and it's great, and that's fine. But that's just they're expensive. And it's not as effective as some of this new stuff that's coming out.
Right.
So I'm happy.
I know. It's so good. And, I remember you have a little delicate tum tum, so those anti-malarials, they didn't
Yeah, I
sit
didn't wind up.
very well with you.
Yeah, I
I
didn't wind up
did. I
taking
took
them.
mine because I was fine.
Hmm.
And I figured, like, as you said, when I went to a place where there's malaria, I got all set up and all cared for because, I did it for work.
Hmm. Yeah, and and you know, I didn't wind up in a true malarial zone. I mean, they sort of gave it as a broad like we don't know exactly where you're going. I was never in a
Hmm.
place. If I was in a place where there was a real a real concern of malaria, I would have taken the pills and just dealt with it. But the fact that I wasn't, and I was like, I'm sort of taking these for no good reason. So,
Hmm.
um, again, I'm sure a lot of people would love to have the privilege of,
Right.
not having to worry about malaria in exchange for a slightly sour stomach. But anyway, so
Hmm.
I don't complain about that. But it was good to have the option. But
Yeah.
um, a couple of good pieces of environmental news. So, like, we talk
Ooh.
about how Congress is terrible and everything's terrible and but there was a bipartisan bill this year that devotes $35 billion to clean drinking water, which, as we know, is an issue in several parts of the country. So that's just in the United States, but there's obviously a global water issues. But
Hmm.
we also have we also have water issues here, and that
Right.
is nice to address.
Yes.
So we talk about Congress not doing anything, but that was a big thing. There's some new data out of the Mississippi River. This is the Mississippi River. Yes, the Mississippi River. So this isn't recent legislation, but basically, so they looked at current in the Mississippi River. They looked at current data, and then they looked at historical data going back to like 1901. And it's basically thanks to the Clean Water Act, which was passed in the 70s. But thanks to the Clean Water Act, essentially, it's never been cleaner in the history of any trackable data from the Mississippi River. So I guess oxygen pH levels are very good. All the bacteria from human and animal waste, I guess, is 1% of what it was in 1980.
Wow, that's great.
So yeah, huge. Um, Other environmental stuff. China kicked off. I mean, we there's a lot of stuff that the U.S. needs to do on the environment.
Hmm.
And a couple things we've done this year that were good. Again, giving it a little credit there. But China's the other sort of the other elephant in the room in terms of having to do if the U.S. and China um, both made big strides in their environmental stuff, that would
Hmm.
go a very long way. And if when the U.S. and China decide not to, it makes it hard for anyone else's efforts to really matter all that much. I hate to say that, but we're the two of the
Hmm.
biggest producers by far. So they have they kicked off the largest energy installation in history, which is a sort of renewable energy project. They are producing, so they've built wind and solar power in the western desert, that produces 100 gigawatts, which, so I knew a gigawatt was a lot. So a gigawatt is enough to power about 750,000 homes.
Oh my gosh.
So just at the outset of this project, they're producing 100 gigawatts of wind and solar power. And then they have they've set aside an area the size of Belgium. um, every single year, they plan to plant a forest area the size of Belgium, going forward. So I guess this was based on what Pakistan had did in planting about 1.5 billion trees in the past year.
Oh my gosh.
China's also upped their wild animal protection, and they've virtually eliminated malaria in the country. So those are huge, big issues with China in terms of treatment of minorities. There are lots of things, not to be crazy about China with, although
Hmm.
we're not always peaches here either. So,
Right.
but those things are huge, and that makes a difference in a lot of lives. Um, the largest single electrical grid in the world, which is in South Australia, went 100% solar. Texas installed 15 gigawatts of renewable power sources. So again,
Ooh.
that's 1 gigawatt is about 750,000 homes. So 15 is still pretty
Hmm.
good.
Right.
Um, Stuff in the United States, abortion was, issues with abortion in the United States and reproductive rights, but abortion was legalized this past year. Abortion was legalized in South Korea, Thailand, and Argentina, with increases in access in New Zealand, Ecuador, and Uruguay. And Mexico's Supreme Court decriminalized abortion in September, which is huge, and has led to the discussion that people in Texas might wind up having to go to Mexico. But at least that's not a great story, but it at least provides a potential option for people in Texas.
Hmm.
Um, in gay stuff, you like gay stuff.
I love gay stuff.
Now you're super into gay stuff.
Yeah.
Canada banned conversion therapy,
That's great.
and yeah, and criminalized profiting off of conversion therapy.
That's great. That's really great.
and France is on the way to do the same thing. I think it did pass in France, but it's got like a couple more. But they're seen as I think they're sort of procedural things that aren't expected to cause too much. And then finally, in space news, the James Webb Telescope launched, Heather, which is the new telescope that's going to sit way out past the moon whenever it gets there sometime. I am not crazy about the name of the James Webb Space Telescope. James Webb was the NASA administrator in the 60s through the Apollo programs and things, which is all very good. And it seems like he did a really good job with that. He also led sort of a witch hunt about gay people in NASA. So,
Oh, so what
which
do you
was,
say we fly on out there and rename it?
I would love that. Thank you. Let's do that.
It's now
But
the
still, I
Ross and
mean,
Heather Space Telescope.
it's now the Ross and Heather Space Telescope for all of our work in
In renaming it.
repainting things and renaming things. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I'll bring my acrylics.
I love that. I love that. You're always so prepared.
Yeah.
It's just scratched off.
With a quarter.
With a quarter. Why is this thing so big?
You know my writing is awful. This poor thing.
But
Maybe we
that's
should get a
but
decal.
but I mean that's going to be a cool. I mean, you think about the images that have come through that we've seen from Hubble, like just these mind-blowing images of, outer space
Mm-hmm.
and and James Webb. I mean, it's not exactly doing the exact same kind of thing, but it's a I don't know how much better, you know what I mean? I don't know how to quantify like how much better it is, but it's a huge leap over what Hubble was, its abilities are a huge leap over what Hubble was able to do. Plus it's further away. So it's further away from any, it's further out into space, which is just gives you a better view. So I have a feeling, knock on wood, that if everything goes well with that and everything works okay, we're going to see some really amazing images from that. So that's a cool
Oh,
thing,
cool.
which is nice. Like, there's, it felt for a while like we stopped doing any good science or whatever. And the space stuff, has been a little sort of mixed feelings about some of the space stuff. It's cool in some ways that, the space tourism, and I think that's the kind of thing that could lead to interesting things in the future. But
Mm-hmm.
now it just seems like, rich people spending more money than anybody has
Right.
to blow off a bunch of carbon in their things and fly up into space
Yeah.
for 5 seconds just to say they can do it.
It
It's the
almost
kind of
seemed a
thing
little
that
gross.
it's again, I have mixed feelings, just because I think it probably is the kind of thing that can lead to advances in the future or make it more possible for that kind of thing to happen in the future. But also, it's pretty gross. It's super gross.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want a future where normal people could go to space, I think this is probably the only way to start that. Just the way our
Yeah.
society works. It's not, we're not going to be like, oh, let's spend $1 trillion to put some really nice people into space. It's just, it
Right.
would never happen.
Right.
So on that level, I'm like, okay, this is maybe just the way
Yeah.
this would have to go, but it's also super gross.
Yeah.
It's super duper gross.
Yeah. Um, do you want to talk about something else that I think might be a little bit gross?
Is this about with in the behind part
No,
where
that's
you
not
like you were going to talk about
gross.
before?
What do you
Well, I mean,
Jeepers
nasty.
creepers. Wow. I
It's
mean,
nasty in a
what
good
kind of
way,
nasty
but
though?
right. No, okay, sure.
So, did you hear about the dad who called up like the NORAD tracker when President and Mrs. Biden were President and Dr.
God.
Biden, right?
Yeah.
President and Dr. Biden were like taking calls to Santa, and this guy said, "Let's go, Brandon."
Yes. I heard about it.
So I guess there's this
so cool, right? Is that where you're going with
Well,
this?
they're
Super cool.
what I'm so this happened, they had a little conversation about what the kids were going to get for Christmas.
Hmm.
And then Dr. Biden said, well, have a Merry Christmas, have a wonderful Christmas. And this guy, Jared Schmeck, said, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry Christmas and let's go, Brandon. And Joe Biden said, let's go, Brandon. I agree. So basically, the guy was like, Merry Christmas, bleep you. And President Biden was like, yeah, bleep me. So after this, Schmeck got disconnected, but the article from Slate says at the time, some members of Schmeck's family seemed quite pleased with what had just taken place. My husband may or may not have just told Joe and Jill Biden, let's go, Brandon, on the phone, wrote his wife on Instagram alongside 2 crying emojis. And he posted, we called NORAD and they patched us to the president. Let's go, Brandon. And now I guess some people didn't like that. They didn't like that somebody would use that coded language to say something that is known to be rude to the president. And now all of a sudden,
With children. on
right,
a on
right,
a on
with
a
his
holiday,
children
on a Santa
on a
Claus
Christmas
Christmas
tracker,
holiday thing.
in
Yeah.
response to the president and Dr. Biden wishing him a very Merry Christmas, this was what he said. Now, all of a sudden, he's insisting that he's joking and meant no disrespect, while still seeming pretty proud of himself. But he's quoted as saying, at the end of the day, I have nothing against Mr. Biden, but I am frustrated because I think he can be doing a better job. I mean no disrespect to him. I understand there's a vulgar meaning to let's go, Brandon, but I'm not that simple minded, no matter how I feel about him. He seems like a cordial guy. There's no animosity or anything like that. It was merely just an innocent jest to also express my God given right to express my frustrations in a joking manner. What? Is this like the is this like you're the childhood bully who's like really not very bright, who comes up and punches you in the nose and you go like, hey, you just punched me in the nose, and they go, no, I didn't, and then they go,
Well,
well, I was joking. Like, what's the joke?
it's like the thing you pointed out when we were first talking about that. It's sort of along in the same spectrum to me because and I hadn't heard all this follow up.
Yeah.
Because you talked about you had sort of brought up like the sort of key ridiculousness here is it's people censoring themselves and then freaking out because they're censored when they could just say the thing that they want to say, right?
Well,
And this is sort of that same thing of like, oh, I said it, but I didn't mean it, but I meant it, but I didn't mean it, but I said it, but I don't know.
I mean,
It's
I just
and
don't
I'm
get
very
it.
proud of myself because I have free speech, but I didn't really say it. I didn't mean it like that, but I did.
But
But it
does he?
depends who it depends who's asking.
Yeah, yeah, there's that, and also like he's so proud of himself. Doesn't he realize he got owned real badly by the president? Because I saw some commentary online. People were like, "Oh well, Biden doesn't know what it means." But excuse me, how could that possibly be?
It's
Like
so
how that is impossible that Joe Biden doesn't know what that means.
well, and we hear all the stuff too about like, what if the children have to find? I have to explain to the children. What if there's a gay person out there and I have to tell my children what it means? Like, what about all the kids listening to this going, what does "Let's Go Brandon" mean? And then they have to explain it. And I'm sure a lot of parents are just going, oh, it means "F you" to the president. Because I guess that's where we are. It's fine. And yes, you have a right to express yourself.
Of
Great.
course you do.
So maybe you don't do it on a phone call full of children and then go around acting like you did the coolest thing ever,
I
you grown person with children.
know.
Like I so
It's
cool. Yes, I could get on that call and you know, I could say all sorts of things. Is
of
that
course you
cool?
could.
Not
Yeah,
necessarily.
it I yeah, it was like a grown man saying this and then strutting around. And then I loved the impression you did, so I'm not gonna do it. Of the like, I said it, but I didn't. You did that really well.
Thank you.
But like also he really totally got owned by the president, and he's still prancing around like he did this great thing when it's like, dude, no, you got slammed so bad. I don't know.
Yes.
It
And I just, I have frustrations with his performance. So great. Well, that was a really astute,
it really was. That was a
examination of
great
the
way
issues.
to yeah, to express your concerns.
That really makes clear exactly what it is you're concerned about. You're clearly a very articulate person who has lots of strong ideas about how a better way to run the country.
Yeah,
This is this Let's Go Brandon thing is the dumb. It's
it
in
really
like in a
is.
sea of just incredible dumbness. It's just the dumbest thing. And like you said, just say, if you're going to say, just say it. Maybe not on a call full of children.
Right. Maybe not on Christmas when somebody's
Right.
wishing you a Merry Christmas after talking about what Santa's bringing your family as gifts. And
Especially,
that's like how you choose to respond, because yes, you do have freedom of speech and you can choose to respond in that fashion, but wow, that's what you chose.
well, and especially when, I mean, if we go over the Christmas record of, I assume a lot of the people who use the "Let's Go Brandon" formulation are, would have probably voted for Donald Trump. Who, you know, we talk about the recording of Melania going on and on in a swear-filled rant about how much she hates Christmas,
Yeah.
and Donald Trump, the last time he did one of these NORAD things, just told kids it was stupid to believe in Santa. So, I mean, this is not, the competition here is
I
not
know.
great if we're just talking about Christmas stuff.
Well,
Anyway,
I've Schmeck, the fellow who decided to say that on the NORAD call, does say that he isn't a Trumper and he characterizes himself as a free thinking American and follower of Jesus Christ.
yeah. Well, he seems like a genius.
So,
I think it's important that you ask what would Jesus do, and
yeah.
he would probably do a really bad swear on a call with with a bunch of kids. I think that's
Yep,
what
I guess
Jesus
so.
would
I
do.
guess that
Absolutely.
is the best way to say happy birthday, Jesus.
Right. Away in a manger. F you. On that note,
We're going to close out 2021 with
yeah.
that last statement there. Coming up next on WAYO LP Rochester is the fantastic program Music Matters. So please stay tuned, wash your ears after this show, and we'll talk to you again in 2022. What are you doing? New Year's, New Year's Eve. Oh,
Oh my God, what now?
oh, sorry. Forgot about the baby New Year get up.
You like it?
You're dressed like a baby.
Hmm. You think the boys are gonna like it?
You are dressed like a baby.
Your point.
Do you know what? Never mind. Happy New Year, Ross.
Oh, Happy New Year, Heather. Newport?
Cold.